Hey guys, Kun here. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about blocking creeps in Dota and why you wouldn't want to block creeps on a particular lane. And for this I'm first going to explain what blocking actually does in the game. Usually if you don't block the creeps on either side, the creeps will clash in the middle of the river over here for the mid lane. But if you block the creeps, then you can move the creep equilibrium to your side, closer to your side. And the better you block, the further you can move the creep equilibrium into the direction of your tower. And why will this be beneficial for you? First off, I'm going to explain it for the mid lane. In the mid lane there are two ramps, as you can see. And if you're staying on top of the ramp, you have 100% chance to hit your enemy. But if you're down below in the river, then your chance to hit enemies that are on top of a hill or a ramp is 75% instead of 100%. You basically have a 25% chance to miss. And because of that he can harass you more efficiently than you can harass him. And there's another factor that determines the benefits of blocking the creeps. That is the vision. If the creeps clash over here and your creeps are on top of the ramp and the enemy creeps are below in the river, then the enemies don't actually have vision up the ramp, which means you can harass the enemy hero without pulling creep aggro. And if you don't pull creep aggro, you can basically harass the enemy for free, while he can't actually harass you at all. Because if he tries to hit you, he not only has a 25% chance to miss, but he also pulls creep aggro. And the worst outcome for him is he attacks you, misses, and pulls creep aggro anyways. And basically he loses the lane for free. And because of that, in the mid lane, you want to block as hard as possible. And the best outcome for the mid lane is basically if your creeps are on top of the ramp and the enemy creeps are down below in the river. There's also an additional benefit of blocking creeps for the mid lane. If you're closer to your tower, then you're harder to gank. And let's say you didn't block at all, and the enemy hero did block a little bit. Then the creep equilibrium will be around over here, and you will probably be around over here. Which means if the enemies start a gank on level 1 on you, then you're basically a free kill because you can't escape in time. As soon as you see the enemies, it's already too late. If you had blocked the creeps instead, and if you had managed to block the creeps better than your opponent, you would probably be around over here, and ganking you would be a lot harder. And this also goes the other way around. If you manage to block the creeps harder, and the enemy hero is over here, you obviously have a much easier time to gank him with your team if you coordinate a gank on level 1 or doesn't really matter. It can also be on a higher level, but blocking creeps on the first spawn is very beneficial for the mid lane. And basically the one that blocks better starts off with a huge advantage in the mid lane. Now let's get to the easy lane. On the easy lane you don't want to block at all. And I'm going to demonstrate why this is the case. First off, let me spawn the creeps. For the easy lane, if you don't block at all, the creep equilibrium is around over here or sometimes over there, depending on how the creeps spawn, because sometimes they spawn a little differently and block each other and stuff like that. And basically the creep equilibrium is over here to over here. And if you don't block at all, you can stay over here in range of your tower and be safe and get experience, last hits and all that stuff. But if you block the creeps, then you push the creep equilibrium towards your tower, which means that the tower can start attacking the enemy creeps. And why is this actually disadvantageous for you? If the tower kills off the enemy creeps, then the creep equilibrium will move to over here, because your creeps will have killed off the enemy creeps a lot faster and will start running up here and will clash with the next wave that spawns on the dire side. And if the creep equilibrium is over here, the enemy team on the hard lane has a much easier time to get experience, to get last hits, and they also have a lot more options to gank you, because they can come over here, and instead of having to go through the tower, they can actually just gank you while you're over here, and it's much easier to kill you off. And because of that, you basically lose the lane for free if you block on the easy lane. Basically, you don't want to block in the easy lane at all. And now let's get to the hard lane. On the hard lane, it's quite the opposite. If you, as I said, for the easy lane, let's say we are on the dire side, we don't want to block at all, because otherwise we lose the lane for free. But the hard lane actually wants to change this creep equilibrium to his favor. He wants to push the creep equilibrium towards his tower, and because of that you want to block as hard as possible.
As you will.
But even if you block really good, you actually don't manage to get the creeps to even over here, because it's really hard. And because of that, there's something you can do to increase the efficiency of your block, which I'm going to demonstrate now. Instead of just blocking the creeps, you can block them in a manner that leaves the range creep in front of the pack.
Since you command
And if you manage to get the range creep in front of the pack, which is probably impossible now because the game already goes for 50 minutes and the creep spawn is way too large, but I still managed to do it.
Yes.
Usually if you have a smaller camp, you manage to get the range creep to the front a lot easier. And if you manage to get the range creep in front, it will be killed off rather quickly, and if the range creep dies, most of the damage of your creep camp is basically gone.
Such power
And
is
this means that
ours.
your creep camp is killed off faster than the opponent creep camp, and the creep equilibrium starts pushing towards your tower. And if
Forward,
it starts
Vet.
pushing towards
Your
your tower, you
bottom
have a
tower
much
is
easier
under
time to get
attack.
experience, to get last hits, and this is the most important thing on the hard lane. If you get more experience, and even if you only manage to get level 2, you have already accomplished your job on the hard lane. Because usually, on the hard lane, a good dual lane won't actually let you get any experience at all. And if you dual lane as well on the hard lane, they can tri-lane the top lane and you will still be fucked basically. And because of that, you only send one hero to the hard lane, one that has an escape. And even then it's really hard to get level 2. But if you manage to block the creeps like this, you get a huge advantage, because level 2 is then in your palm's grasp basically. And if you manage to get level 2,
On the
you can
prowl.
already skill Sacred Arrow with Mirana, and instead of just being able to jump around,
Since you command.
which most heroes that you send to the hard lane can do on level 1, they have escape skills or skills like Surge that increase move speed. As soon as you hit level 2, you are actually capable of doing something. You can protect your rune for your mid hero, and you can also gank the enemy mid hero, because now you have a skill that enables you to gank him. And because of that, you can harass, or and if I say harass, I don't actually mean harass, but if you move down here and there's a ward, then the mid hero will probably move back to the tower, and this is actually already harassing him. And if he doesn't have a ward and he doesn't move back, you just move up here and start the gank and help your own mid hero out. And then after you tried the gank, whether it was an accomplishment or not, you
We
just move back and
ride.
try to get as much experience as possible. And that's basically it. For the mid lane, you want to block as hard as possible. For the easy lane, you don't want to block at all. And for the hard lane, you try to block the creeps in a manner that leaves the range creep in front of the enemy pack, in front of your own pack. And if it turns out to be a rather difficult task because the range creep is too stupid to get in front of the camp, you can actually just block the creeps in a manner that leaves a melee creep in front, which is already also really strong, because then the melee creep will die first and you can still try to get the creep equilibrium to move towards your tower instead of staying over here for eternity. which basically means that you don't get any experience at all. Because if you move
Of
up here, the
course.
enemies will start ganking you if they are playing correctly, which I'm assuming. And as soon as you get the creep equilibrium over here, you have a much easier time on the hard lane. And that's basically it. And have fun in your own games and try it out. Let me know in the comments whether it works out for you. And even if it doesn't, have fun in your games and see you next time, guys.